Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. I wasn't sure if I was actually going to do this review just yet, because I kind of want to stay away from sequels for now, because obviously in horror there's a bunch, just get to them further down the road. But I did mention this in my last review, and it is the only sequel I have to the original, and so I figured what the hell, let's get it done. So my last review was the original Sleepaway Camp, 80s slasher film I like quite a bit. And the only sequel I have is the one people hate the most. It's the only one that I thought would be worth a damn, and that is Return to Sleepaway Camp. Now, real quick, this movie was finished filming in 2003. It was going to be released theatrically between 2004 and 5. But due to complaints, which I'll get to, this didn't get released until direct-to-video until 2008. Now, Sleepaway Camp, of course, is a classic. In the 80s, you got Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Camper, Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland, both where Pamela Springsteen plays Angela. I haven't seen those. I've heard they were horrible. I guess they are. But the common consensus is that this is the biggest piece of shit of the bunch, even compared to them. I guess there's a fourth movie called like Survivor or Survival, but that's even unfinished, and you can only get it as part of the box set, which I don't even think you can get anymore. And I'll admit, this movie is a rotten piece of shit. Stupid ass movie. But the only reason why I chose to see this over the other two is because it has the original director, who also produced and wrote this film, like the original. And it has returning cast and characters from the original. So I thought, okay, out of all of them, this is going to be the truest sequel to the original. But I guess that doesn't even matter, because most people dismiss this and just accept the other two, which I thought were going to be piles of crap also. I mean, I have the same complaints with this stupid fucking movie. You know, the CGI is terrible, the story's all over the place, it tries too hard to do something, which I'll get to, and this movie fails across the board. That said, it's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. I mean, I can watch this and laugh at it. Do I still think it sucks? Yes. Do I still think it's a fucking piece of shit? Absolutely. But I can watch this the same way I can watch Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin is worthless and sucks ass too. But I laugh at it. It's got so bad, it's humorous humor in it. But also, this is a movie that you can tell they weren't trying to be serious. Either they were having fun, or they just didn't care. So, at least in that sense, you know, you can kind of go with it a little bit. It's only 86 minutes. It's barely an hour and a half. Basically, you know, the story is, it's some years later. It's like 20, I guess at this point, 25 years later. When they filmed it, 20. There's this new camp opening. The co-owner is Ronnie, played by Jonathan Tiersten, who played Ronnie in the original, who was just a counselor. He runs it with Vincent Pastore, who I know I've seen before, probably in some mob comedies. He has that kind of look. Excuse me. Jonathan Tiersten plays Ricky, who played Ricky in the original. Paul DeAngelo is Ronnie. So, excuse me. And there's this new summer camp, but of course, you know, nothing's changed. The counselors are bigger assholes. The kids are bigger shitheads in this one. With the lead shithead being our lead, this kid Allan, who's probably 14 or 15. He's a bit big for his age. He's a big, heavy kid. And he just bullies the hell out of the younger kids. But he also gets tormented to shit by the older kids. And pretty much, the murders are whoever fucks with Allan. Because the thing with the Sleepaway Camp films is even the tagline, kids can be so mean. You know, it's bullying. Like, kid gets bullied, everyone that, or at least in the original, it was kids that bullied Angela, they got killed. And this movie tries so fucking hard to get you to think that Allan is the killer. And it does such a poor job at it. I mean, actually I'll get to that. But I mean, if one thing I don't understand, and it's the same thing everyone points out with this, is if bullying is the reason to get you killed, then why isn't Allan the first one to be murdered? Because, I mean, the movie opens up, there's these young kids, they're probably 11 or 12, just small kids. They're in their bunk and they're lighting farts. That should let you know what kind of movie you're into. Allan comes out of the bathroom and he's just like, what are you dickheads laughing about? He's always pushing little kids around. And then, you know, he tries to light a fart, but he has a nasty sounding fart. They're sort of snickering to themselves about Hershey squirts. And Allan gets so pissed, he takes an aerosol can, makes a flamethrower, and he's like, how's that for a flame? And he has this look on his face, scaring the kids. So they're trying to get you to think this kid's fucking psycho. And right after, they're like, okay, follow this kid. This is the kid that's going to be doing this shit. But then, and I'm not even going to say spoiler alert, because I don't think anybody's going to care. In the beginning, they're like, everyone's at breakfast, and they're having this announcement because there's this police officer who uses the talk box. Talk to the kids about dangers of smoking. And it is so obvious that, you know, that it's a fake beard, it's a prosthetic nose, sunglasses, very small frame. It's known that Felissa Rose is coming back as Angela. It's pretty fucking obvious that this person is not who he says he is, that he's wearing a disguise. You know, even this movie would not have such a poor cop costume like that. And then, you know, I don't even want to go fully into the plot because I don't want to spend too much time on this, but, you know, each kid that tricks Allan gets his own. There's this stoner who, you know, he gets like tied down to a chair because he's stoned and just sleepy. He's sitting in a chair, he gets tied down to it. Killer takes this hose because they do a wonderful job of giving black gloves, black hoodie. Sticks a hose in his mouth, and this is such a cheap trick. You can tell the killer has a loose grip on the hose, and he's just going like this. So it looks like he's feeding the hose down him. Pumps him full of gasoline. Puts some duct tape with a hole in it for a joint over his mouth. It says drugs are for dummies. Lights it, and then, you know, the kid explodes with horrendous, pitiful Sci-Fi Channel CGI. And that's the biggest complaint that this movie has had, besides the writing, is the CGI. That's not even the first death. The first death is there's this cook who's an asshole to Allan. He's by himself in the kitchen one night, and it is done just like in the original, with the pedophile with the boiling water. He's standing at the deep fryer. Killer comes up behind him, picks up his legs, so he's sort of like this over the fryer. Killer grabs a chair so he can stand him up more vertical. And I mean, it's greasy, so he's sliding everywhere, and then he slips and goes into the deep fryer. Now, I'll say, I used to work in fast food at the fryer. I've splashed bits on myself before. Shit fucking burns. So yeah, that's a horrific death. Even watching it, I'm just like, ugh. But then, when he falls out, you can tell it's a rubber dummy because he bounces. And it's just awful CGI to make him look all burnt up. That's the first kill. Then I think the stoner's second. And I mean, they prank Allan by like trying to get him to smoke a joint full of cow shit. Or this girl he has a crush on, but she is more into his more Abercrombie looking brother. And it's a group of these older friends that keep fucking with him. She convinces him to play spin the bottle in this building, which is behind a stage where it's like the rec hall. But they just attack him, and then they get all the lights to go out with the spotlight on the stage. They stripped him down to his underwear, tied him up with like a snow hat, make him look ridiculous. He wants to play paintball, so he goes out, in the paintball field, but both sides get together and just pepper the shit out of him. Everyone starts calling him blowjob, because when he's hacking from the shit joint, he's like up against someone, looks like he's blowing him. And then finally, all these kids are out in the woods around his bunk chanting like blowjob, blowjob. And then finally they do this thing where he runs outside screaming. He looks up and screams. The camera pans in and he just does like this, like look down. And he does like, then he runs off into the woods. So you're supposed to think, okay, now he's going to go off and kill people. More people. But no, you find out at the end what he does. There's this other counselor that's been a prick to him. I think he's Australian. He's sort of with this lady counselor. They're supposed to be having some time to themselves. But out in the woods, he makes her go back and get more beer. He's having a piss, and then, rope goes around him. He's tied to a tree. Little fishing line noose comes down, goes around his dick. You find out there's a bunch of fishing line. Scares her, gets in the Jeep. You find out the Jeep is tied to the other end. So every time she goes forward, it pulls on him, pulls on his dick. But she gets stuck in the mud, so you get this long scene with her going like this, and him like, oh. And this is how cheap and silly this movie is. When it finally rips it off, it's just a, and then it's him screaming. But since it's a Jeep and it's a convertible, she's going down the road and there's like barbed wire tied to trees across from each other. So when she crashes into it, it wraps all around her. Which you get a cool effect later on. This other kid, the main kid that picks on Allan, he's banned to his bunk. And there's this long scene. He's looking at this porno mag. And there's a hole in the floor, and this broom handle, sharpened down to a point, comes up through the magazine, almost stabs him. So then him and this other kid are in the bunk, and they both take turns looking down into the hole where you can see it. He's like, do you see it? The other kid looks down. No, I can't see anything. Other kid, it's right there. And they go back and forth like 5 times. Then finally the one kid gets it right in the eye with CGI around the eye. Except he does run into a wall and makes it go in further, so that's kind of neat. And, just talking about each death, and then you get like the head owner. He's like obsessed with his cockatoo. He thinks Allan corrupts it because Allan keeps saying your ass stinks. So he's like tied down, and the killer takes his bird cage. He has like this sack, you can tell there's something in it, and he's hitting it to piss it off. Dumps a couple rats in there. So then later, when our other characters find him, he's got this CGI hole in his stomach with rats chilling in it. And it's just, I mean, yeah, you get a lot of kills, but it's just very silly stupidness throughout it. The one that everybody seems to like is there's this heavier set girl named Bella, and they really play her out that way because, she has like a hoard of candy under her bed. She's always down at the snack bar. Well, she's by herself in the bunk, and she's chilling on the bottom bunk. And you see that on the bed above her, there's a bunch of nails. and the killer's up in the rafters. So the killer jumps down off the rafters, lands on the bed, and squashes her, essentially with a bed of nails. That was a fun kill. That's the one everyone seems to enjoy the most. And then again, just with trying to get you to think Allan's the killer, she gets knocked out, and she's standing on the bleachers, and she has this noose tied to a basketball hoop, and the button is hit, so the hoop goes up, so it's like pulling her. Someone finds her in time, and the killer's standing there the whole time. So then, as soon as the killer runs out, a little cop runs in another door. So, I mean, this movie wants you to think so badly that it's Allan that it throws the logic of time and space and being in more one place at a time, throws that out the window. And Allan has this place, this secret spot where he pets frogs. You know, he likes frogs. So his brother Michael goes there and skins all the frogs. So that's when we get probably the only death that looks cool. Well, other than the barbed wire one. Because she's running around thinking Allan's going to get her. She comes across the Jeep. And this is the only creepy moment. She sees the girl who's still alive, but she's got barbed wire wrapped all around her. And she does like this slow, like, with like creepy music playing. And she just runs off and leaves her there. I was like, okay, that was done kind of in a creepy way. So yeah, Michael goes to beat up Allan, and then the killer gets him. And then we find out Michael's been skinned alive. And I'll admit, the gore effects look cool. They should have done that the whole movie, but they didn't. I know I've only been talking about the kills, but that's all this movie has going for it. And even then, a lot of them suck because it's all fucking CGI. The reveal at the end. So yeah, Ricky is also in it. Ricky works construction. You know, he's still got a bad attitude. He says he got a call from the cop to go to the camp, so of course Ronnie thinks it might be Ricky because they were both in the original film. Ronnie being the head counselor, Ricky being Angela's cousin from the original. So, you know, some random girl, Ricky and Ronnie find Allan beaten up. And they're like, who did this to you? And he points. And then we get this usual suspects reveal, like someone's feet walking. You hear the talk box like, kids are so mean. They're always... As you see the bits of the disguise falling on the ground. So it's like the usual suspects. And it's just like, oh no shit, it was the fucking cop. And then pan up to see Felissa Rose, finally. Like, I'm sure it was marketed as original cast members, including Felissa Rose. And she's literally in the final shot. And she says, like, Michael thought it was cool to skin frogs. Ask him how cool it is now. And that's when we see Michael's been skinned with good practical gore effects. I don't know why they didn't use throughout the rest of the movie. And then, of course, she does this laugh. And then she, like, looks down at the screen. A very stupid look. Very cheap. And that's the movie. I only went over the kills and spoiled the ending because that's all this movie has. The only other thing I could say that was very humorous was, you know, for more than half my life, I've been religious about the show South Park. That's my favorite show ever. They got Isaac Hayes to not only play a cook, but to play chef. That's his name. On the Isaac Hayes as the chef. And he wears blue jeans and a red t-shirt. He's only in a couple scenes, but I thought that was hilarious. Maybe a little distracting, but actually it would have been distracting if this was a good movie, but it wasn't. And, you know, it's kind of funny. The reason why this movie took 5 years to come out is because everyone bitched about the CGI, the acting, and the pacing. I think the pacing. Definitely the CGI and the acting and the writing. So, more and more production companies came in, like effects companies came in to touch it up. And it wasn't until this little company came in and touched some things up without their authorization. What did they touch up? Well, the death of the kid with the broom handle, because I said CGI around the eye, but there is some real blood, and the effects of Michael being skinned alive. So the two practical effects, which they were unauthorized to do, those were the ones that made this movie get released. Direct to video, but still. What does that tell you? And again, this movie's so cheap, they couldn't have done... I mean, I don't think Sleepaway Camp is like Evil Dead, where practical effects are imperative. But, you know, actually, across the board, I'll take practical over CGI. But, you know, Sleepaway Camp, the original, was very low budget, but it had a charm to it. And the effects it had were very well done. All practical. The blistering of the skin on the pedophile after the boiling water. The kid with the bees. You know, so if this movie was suffering from budgets, they could have just got some cheap practical effects. It would have looked better than cheap-ass CGI. That's what this movie suffers from the most. CGI, shitty CGI, bad acting, not one character to give a shit about. The one you're supposed to give a shit about is the biggest asshole in the whole movie, that fucking kid Allan. And, you know, deaths that don't amount to much. And just so much focus on Allan being the killer that everything else just seems lazy. Lazy-ass disguise for the cop. Having the cop and the killer be almost in the same place at once because they want you to think it's Allan. But yeah, even after all that said and done, I can watch this to laugh at it. Do I hate it? Like, absolutely loathe it the way everyone else does? No. For a time waster, I can pop this in and laugh at it, but I still think it's a worthless piece of shit. This is still going to be a rant. So yeah, Sleepaway Camp, shitty-ass movie. I can laugh at it. I don't hate it, but it's definitely not good. So, can I recommend it? No. Just watch the original and stick with that. Return to Sleepaway Camp sucks. But for Room 237, that's Return to Sleepaway Camp. Thank you.